Hi, good day everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of India Energy Samvad. As you know, it's a dialogue on the global and domestic energy markets and the challenges around it. After four impactfully successful dialogues, here we are with the fifth one in our series. I am Mathur Pillai, the Energy and Industry Advisor to CPPR in India, and the host and chair for this evening. As you know, CPPR, the Center for Public Policy Research, is a leading Indian think tank where energy security is one of our key areas of our interest, along with so many other areas we are working related to the public policy. Before we get into today's discussion, I think it would be beneficial to quickly walk through the areas we had covered in the previous episodes. In the first one, if you may recall, we had kicked off the series with energy transitions and the fuels of future. And in the second dialogue, we touched on the reforms and sustainabilities in the energy sector. When we moved to the third episode, the focus was on the future of coal in the energy sector. And the last one, the fourth one we had was on the role of electric vehicles in India's energy secure future. Now, if you look at these four topics, these were kind of standalone, but with very strong connecting pins too. And today in our fifth dialogue, we will navigate through the evolution and the trends in the solar energy infrastructure in India. Like we had clarified in our earlier dialogues, I would like to reiterate again that our focus is not just on the environmental aspects, because it's very, very important to give that message clearly. The deliberations in our dialogues will be around a very balanced blend of business, geopolitics, global economics, and national policies. And to dwell upon today's topic, we have three renowned panelists with enviably outstanding profiles in their respective domains. Dr. Vinod Timari, the regional mentor of change for the Atal Innovation Mission, carrying 2.5 decades of experience in the power engineering industry. And our second panelist is Advocate Megha Arora, who is a partner at the JSA Advocates and Solicitors. She commands over 18 years of expertise in complex legal and regulatory affairs in the projects and energy sector. And we have Dr. Debajit Palit with over 25 years of experience in renewable energy, rural electrification, and sustainable development. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so very much from CPPR. Now, just to give you a high-level view of our structure today, we would have 5 components in our dialogue today. The first is the one which is going on, which is kind of approximately 8 to 10 minutes introduction of the topic and the panelists. And then we will have 2 rounds, which we call at CPR the general rounds of discussion. In each round, we will have 1 question to each of the panelists, and where they would be talking for about 3 to 4 minutes each. So these 2 rounds will be general topics related to today's area. And the round 3, we would be really mapping to specific expertise and research interests of this panelist, wherein the panelists will be deliberating about 6 to 7 minutes. And these 3 rounds will be finally followed by a Q&A of 15 minutes. Now, we request all the attendees just keep posting your questions on the chat box, because we have our research team in the back office at CPPR who are compiling these questions, first removing the duplication or connecting the questions together, because we are going to be constrained to 15 minutes for the Q&A, and we expect a lot of questions. So our team will pick the most relevant and important questions and get the right panelists to address each of them. Now, coming to today's topic, let's first look at India's power generation capacity today. We command a generation capacity of about 416 gigawatts. And within this, What is truly remarkable is amalgamation, or rather the beautiful blending of the conventional and the renewable sources. And it is this blend of multiple sources of energy that is fueling our nation. And if we talk explicitly about the solar revolution, we can see it has taken giant strides in the last 2 decades, really giant strides. With about 70 gigawatts installed capacity of solar, we are the 4th largest solar power generator globally. I am not stopping. Still, our goals are nothing short of ambitious. The country has again issued tenders for 40 gigawatts of solar and hybrid projects in this fiscal year too. So there's yet another addition to this. Now, if you look at the solar power market in India, that's another dimension to it. One is installed capacity. We also need to look at the market growth. It is poised for a really, really steep rise. In fact, it is projected to increase by $240 billion from 2021 to 2026, just 5 years, and $240 billion. Phenomenal. And if you look at it closely, it's an astonishing compounded annual growth rate of around 35%. Really amazing, isn't that? Now, if you look at the prominence of the solar energy in the renewable energy, because this is another way we can look at it. What is its prominence in the energy sector? My take is, it's not just mere a coincidence. In fact, it's accessibility and scalability. And these are the two components make it a clear force in meeting India's ever-increasing energy demands, be it from the population growth or from the industrial growth of the country. And what sets it apart from other sources of energy is the inherent decentralization. This is very, very key. The inherent decentralization of solar infrastructure is very, very important. Because this in turn is empowering the communities and alleviating the burden on the central grids. Because as we know, it had always been a challenge. It is continuing to be a challenge to handle the centralized grids. In pursuit of the sustainable future, solar energy infrastructure is not just a component. I would call it as a cornerstone. Because it represents a fundamental shift in how we are sourcing energy, reshaping our economic trajectory, nurturing our environment, and strengthening our geopolitical resilience. So it's impactfully major player and even an influencer of the country's growth. Actually, with every watt of solar energy harnessed, India illuminates a brighter and cleaner path for the future generation. And this is how important and critical this source is. And it also demonstrates what priority should be given to the solar infrastructure. And we all can confirm that the government is giving the right priority. The industry is giving the right priority. The business is giving the right priority. It is enjoying the right priorities, and it needs to just grow, and it is. And today, India is standing at a juncture where the twin challenges of energy security and the environmental sustainability, these are the two challenges. They demand our collective attention. In fact, the government of India has charted an audacious plan or a path aiming for 500 gigawatts of installed renewable energy capacity by 2030. Very ambitious plan. And a significant share of it is solar power. Now, as we embark on this dialogue, we must also acknowledge what had happened in G20 summit, the developments during the summit. We all know that the G20 member countries collectively account for about 80% of the global emissions. And the summit did give a great good news. And during the summit, the countries have made significant commitments to renewable energy, including solar power. And that aligns perfectly with today's topic. The G20 countries have pledged to work towards tripling the global renewable energy capacity by 2030, yet another ambitious target. And if it is achieved, for which we have good reasons to believe it has the potential to avoid approximately 7 billion tons of CO2 emissions between now and 2030, a huge number. So our today's dialogue couldn't have been better timed, I would say. So with this introduction, we will delve deep into the heart of solar energy infrastructure, exploring its present state and the promising horizons ahead. Now, let me introduce my panelists in a bit more detail. Dr. Vinod Tiwari is a regional mentor of change for the Atal Innovation Mission. He brings over 2.5 decades of experience in the power engineering industry. A true veteran in the engineering industry, Vinod has been leading the UAE market since 2012, especially through the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company and the telecom industry in the country. Dr. Tiwari is a sought-after speaker, educator, motivator, who conducted more than 130 seminars in India and UAE at various industry forums and conventions. Dr. Tiwari is known for his multifaceted personality encompassing leadership, business, social work, philanthropic activities, promotion of culture, education, and sports. As an acknowledged technical expert and sought-after leader in the solar industry innovation, he is also a regular contributor to various industries and considered as an authority in many aspects related to power electronics industry. Welcome, Dr. Tiwari, to CPPR's This Current Exhibit. Our second speaker, Advocate Megha Arora, is a partner at JSA Advocates and Solicitors. She commands over 18 years of experience in complex legal and regulatory affairs of the projects and energy sector. She has advised clients in all aspects of project development and operations, including setting up for greenfield and brownfield projects. Her experience includes project or energy-related joint ventures, mergers and acquisitions, cross-border investments, bid advisory, and advisory on energy and project contracts. In the renewable energy sector, Megha regularly advises major solar and wind energy players on key legal issues and acquisitions and investments. Her extensive knowledge of the legal aspects of the renewable energy and her expertise in the project development and operations make her an authority in this field. Welcome, Advocate Megha, to this episode. Our third speaker is Dr. Debajit Palit. With over 25 years of experience in renewable energy, rural electrification, and sustainable development, Debajit is a beacon of knowledge and leadership in this domain. He was ranked in the world's top 2% of scientists by the Stanford University of USA. As an authority in this field, his work spans innovative research, policy formulation, and implementation of clean energy solutions across 17 countries in Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Dr. Palit's insight into solar technology and his pivotal role in rural electrification, gender empowerment, and resource efficiency are widely acknowledged and highly recognized. Now, my esteemed panelists, together let us delve into 3 core aspects of today's topic. Of course, this is a very broad topic. I would suggest we navigate our discussions about the 3 core aspects, if you all agree. First being the pivotal role of energy companies in driving the solar project. And then they also need to advocate for sustainable practices and navigate the financial indications. The second one is the significance of community engagement in expediting the solar energy adoption, because India is a country which is fast adopting the solar culture and promoting socio-economic growth, which is very, very key, and empowering the local communities. And the third is a blend with next level of technology, which is a promising fusion of the solar energy and the blockchain technology, redefining the energy traceability, transparency, and peer-to-peer energy markets. Now, without further ado, let's start with the discussion through the light and throw the light on the transformative promises and pressing realities of solar energy in infrastructure in India. Because along with the promises and the growth, we also face a lot of challenges as realities which we have to work around. Now, let me start with Dr. Tiwari. Dr. Tiwari, over the past decade, India has witnessed a remarkable shift towards renewable energy sources, particularly in solar power. With ambitious targets and significant investments, the country has become one of the world's fastest growing solar markets. And in fact, I touched it in the introduction. India's solar capacity has increased from just 10 megawatt in 2010, can you believe it, to over 40 gigawatt by 2021. And this has made us the global leader in the solar energy adoption. And this transition promises a greener future for India amid the growing global concerns about the climate change and the environmental sustainability. Now, my question to you is, considering this development, how do you see or perceive the role of solar energy infrastructure in India's transition towards a greener future? And also, if you can touch upon what unique attributes make it a cornerstone for this transformation. Over to you, Dr. Vinod.
Okay. So that's a really great question you have asked. Thank you very much. So before I start, I would like to convey my thanks to the CPPR, who is doing a great job, phenomenal job. And the people behind it, I would like to say thank to Mr. Madhu, Ms. Anu, and all of your team who are doing it, very graciously, very patiently, and, with very excitement, it's growing everywhere. I could see the buzz everywhere on the social media. And it's really an honor and privilege for me to be here, sharing the stage with Dr. Palit and Dr. Ms. Megha as well. Thank you very much for having me over here. So coming to your question, the solar energy infrastructure. So let me tell you that it plays a vital role in India's journey towards the greener future. The way you have presented your the background, the renewable power goals and those things which have we achieved in our future plans, amazing. Now let me tell you that firstly, solar energy is abundant in India. That's because of its geographical location, providing ample sunshine throughout the year, like 5+ hours of sunlight every single day. And it makes a fantastic renewable power source to tap into. Plus, solar power is freely available, reducing our dependency on finite sources like fossil fuels and all. And this all what I'm saying is experiencing it on a daily basis. Because right now I'm talking from Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and I'm living in a penthouse, and here I have installed a solar power plant of 3 kilowatt around 4 years before. And till today, I have never paid a single rupee to the UGVCL, to the grid power. And today, every single day, I'm generating around 12 units a day from 3 kilowatt. So which is something very amazing because of the great sunshine throughout the year. Secondly, solar energy infrastructure has a potential to decentralize power generation, empowering communities at the grassroots level. The grassroots level communities can be empowered with the solar panels on rooftops, distributed solar farms. It enables individuals and local business to become energy producers themselves. They can say proudly, I always used to say that I produce my own energy, and that too very green. So you can say like that. Now imagine the sense of the self-sufficiency and environmental stewardship that comes with generating your own clean energy. Moreover, solar energy infrastructure contributes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We all know that. Combating climate change and improving the air quality. Maybe like in future, people, I just make a joke around that today you're going and buying, going to get a good water, you pay for good water. In future, you have to go for pure oxygen. And it's happening some places in India that you go and pay money and you go into the oxygen chamber. So if you are working on this, you're actually supporting to help the air quality. Now, by replacing the traditional form of energy generation, such as like coal-fired power plants, with solar power, we can significantly curb carbon emissions and create a cleaner and healthier environment for us and for future generations. Another significant aspect of solar energy infrastructure is scalability and adaptability. You know, whether it's a large scale solar farms, residential rooftop solar installation, or even portable solar panels for remote areas, solar energy can be harnessed in various ways to meet the diverse energy needs. So this is very, very important. Lastly, I would like to add the development of the solar energy infrastructure promotes job creation and economic growth as well. It opens up the opportunities in the manufacturing, installation, maintenance, and research sector, providing employment for driving huge innovations in every aspect. This not only helps in the transition to green future, but overall to boost the economy. So this is all. Now in summary, I will say that solar energy infrastructure in India is crucial for transitioning towards a green future due to its abundant availability, decentralization potential, emission reduction capabilities, and scalability and economic benefits. It's an exciting time for renewable energy and solar power at our forefront of the transformative journey. Thank you, Mr. Madhu.
And that was indeed insightful, Vinod. And you have really smartly touched upon everything in a very brief way. Really, really thanks for that. Now, can I ask Dr. Debajit Palit to build upon Dr. Tiwari's insights? What are the key factors contributing to the success and sustainability of the solar project? Because he has touched upon the high-level things. What are the key factors contributing to success? And it's not only sufficient for us to just build, we need to sustain it as well. And how do you think, how can this help the expansion of solar energy infrastructure in India? Dr. Palit.
Thank you, Mr. Madhu. And it's a pleasure to be again with Dr. Tiwari. We were there in another webinar, I think sometime back, this one. So thank you, CPPR, for inviting me and giving this opportunity to speak on a subject which is close to my heart. So while Dr. Tiwari has already covered many of the aspects, and he rightly mentioned about the availability of solar everywhere, this one, and to all, I call it solar is something as a technology. It is extremely secular. This one, it is available. It doesn't distinguish between rich and poor, or from north and south, or whatever differences the little bit of fault lines we may have in the country. At the same time, it is modular. You can have a few watt to megawatt, and now we are talking about gigawatt. So with solar parks. So again, it is extremely modular. A very interesting aspect, you asked about me, what are the success factors of solar? Two interesting aspects that I would like to mention here is that while we all know that solar has been successful in India because the price reduced during the last maybe around 8 to 10 years, it is on a declining trend, and we always try to give credit to either it is the efficiency improvement or the reverse bidding process that has taken place. Of course, they have their own role. But one thing that we tend to miss out is the huge material efficiency improvement in solar taking place during the last decade. And so when I talk about material efficiency, it's something like for the same amount of silicon, whatever you used to produce 10 years back, whatever power we used to produce 10 years back, now we produce almost 2 times or maybe more than that. So there's a huge material efficiency improvement, and this material efficiency improvement is also going to drive the solar sector in the near future. A lot of research is going on in terms of material efficiency improvement, and that is going to change the face of the technology in the near future. The other aspect that again we sometimes miss out, explicitly mentioning it, is that in India, and I take it from the availability of solar at different places in India, if we see the maximum minimum ratio of solar radiation across the country, that means whatever is the maximum and the ratio of minimum to maximum, this is a factor of 2. That means whatever is minimum, the maximum we can have double that, right? In a country like Germany, which is considered to be the pioneer in the development of solar. We all take examples of Germany and try to learn lessons from Germany. The maximum minimum ratio in Germany is around 30. So during some time of the year, during 4 or 5 months, there are hardly any solar in Germany, whereas during the rest of the year, it increases up to 30 times. This one. Now, if Germany can succeed with ratio of 30, and in USA, the same figure is around 5, if I know it correctly. So if they can succeed with solar, in India is in a pole position to succeed. And we just translated those technical things through a good policy. So during the last, say, 8 to 10 years, or maybe a little more than that, after the passage of the National Solar Mission, I think policy played a big role in expanding the solar in the country. Now, normally, in most of the time, we have policies being formulated at the wrong point of time or at a late when things get we are not formulating the policies at the right time when it is required to be formulated. In case of, I think, renewable energy, especially solar, probably we have seen the policies to come in at the right time, whatever policies are required. Whether you call it the deployment policies, the incentive policies for deployment, or the local manufacturing policies. Now, maybe 5 years back, the local manufacturing would not have been a good policy, but this is the right time to have local manufacturing because we have increased the deployment to a large, considerable extent. And now the policy has been brought in with the PLI and other things, and it is going to give further impetus to the solar industry. And the entire value chain development is going to take place now. So this again will help us in sustaining the deployment that we have been achieving. The other good factor, which is also going to play big in the near future for deployment, is the strong industry and developer focus. So the value chain development is taking place. A lot of the big companies are into the solar, and more big companies are getting into the solar. It started with the smaller companies, but gradually the bigger companies have joined in, and that is going to provide the necessary sustainability as far as deployment is concerned. The finance, the lending rate is coming down with more technology improvement. I think banks and financial institutions are now more eager to finance the solar project, which were not there 10 years back. Now they're more eager to finance, and with the reinforcement of the energy transition, framework in the recent G20 meeting with the plan for deploying 3 times the target, the current deployment, I think solar is going to get the boost that is required for the industry. Transition financing is again another thing that is happening, of course, in India, we have to see that one thing where we are lagging is that our lending rates are still higher than a country like Saudi Arabia. So while we have achieved less than 2 Indian rupees per kilowatt hour, I think in Saudi Arabia it is much lower. So if you can reduce the lending rates further through a better understanding of the technology and more for the financing institute coming forward, I think solar rates can go further cheap. This one, and of course, new business models are being developed. We had a huge experience of, and this is something that is not much talked about, huge experience of wind energy, private sector-led wind energy development in the country. That also helped in some way, especially the southern and western states, in having the solar energy, private sector-led solar energy development. So that experience helped us in a big way. And these experiences is going to help us in future also. And that's why you see more number of plants in the southern and western states than in the eastern or northern states, because traditionally southern and western states have focused on wind energy development. So I think renewable energy development agencies of those states we're in a better position to deal with the private sector, create incentive framework for the private sector, and that help the industry. Going ahead, I think new business model like decentralization and use of digital technologies is also, and solar being modular is also going to help the solar industry, not necessarily the large utility-based power plants, but in addition to those plants, the smaller plants are also going to find more favor. Digitalization is going to help with use of blockchain technologies and other things will be much different than what it is now. I sometimes say that the national highways and all the elevated networks, elevated corridors and railway networks and everything on the southern side, we should put up solar. This one also, maybe this one, we are not doing that right now, and you have to design all those things in what the Honorable Minister, Mr. Gadkari, is doing with the road network. He should also think of considering putting solar as a mandatory requirement in all the elevated corridors that are being constructed in India. This one, all south-facing elevated corridors should have solar. This one, so something like those things have to be inbuilt and made mandatory to have solar, because we are a land-constrained country, despite such a big country. So to avoid that constraint and to mitigate that risk, I think these are some of the things that we should consider. Concentrated solar power, the thermal technology with storage could be another development. Which could take place in the near future, and definitely with further reduction in storage prices, solar will find more favor. This one, still storage is a big issue in India. Storage prices are not that low, but with more and more development taking place and new technologies, I think storage prices are going to reduce in the near future, and that will help the solar industry grow. With renewed focus on the hydrogen economy, I think again solar will find some more favor just to support the hydrogen industry. So these are some of the areas where I think a lot of work has already been done and need to be done, and the solar revolution has just started, I would say. This one, so we have to watch out this space in the next decade, where I feel that we will see a 5-fold increase or maybe more than that in the deployment. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bharat. In fact, it was very, very insightful. You touched many key success factors. You, in fact, had given some good suggestions as well. Like, where you touched the entry of big players, making the industry more sustainable and giving more confidence to other players. And you also touched the financing cost being a factor and the possibility of that being coming down. In the interest rates in developing country like India is not going to come down so fast, but there are tendencies toward that direction as well. And I liked your idea of using elevated highways for this. It's a fantastic idea. And I can give an example of one of the international airports, which is the Cochin International Airport, which is 100% functioning only on solar. It's a huge airport, which is 100% functioning on solar. So there are great suggestions and great points you have made. Thank you so very much. Now let me move to our legal and regulatory expert, Advocate Megha Arora. Megha, in COP26 in 2021, in October, I believe, India had set an enhanced target of 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel-based energy by 2030. And solar energy has taken a central place in India's National Action Plan on the climate change. In fact, I would say the National Solar Mission today is one of the key missions of the government of India. And with your vast experience in the legal and regulatory sides of this sector, which are less talked about in many of the conferences and the webinars or whatever forum the knowledge is shared, can you please provide an insight into how India's legal and regulatory framework has currently facilitated the growth of this sector, the solar energy sector? Of course, keeping India's sustainable development goals in mind. Please, if you can.
Sure. Good evening to the esteemed panelists, and thank you for this opportunity. Good evening to all the guests who have joined, ladies and gentlemen. I think Dr. Tiwari and Dr. Palith have already touched upon a lot of important issues, specifically, on the policy front. Dr. Palith was talking about it. So currently, if you see the installed capacity, the renewable energy installed capacity is almost 179 gigawatt, out of which approximately 125 gigawatt is set up by the private sector. Solar is approximately out of this, the entire thing around 70 gigawatts. So we've already made a significant, progress towards our target of 500 gigawatt. There has been a conscious effort by the government to, at the legal and the policy level, which has impacted the growth of the sector. So some of the key measures which have impacted the growth is, of course, the solar PLI scheme. Currently, it's in its second phase, and there is an expected 65 gigawatt per year, capacity which can be manufactured. Then there are various state level policies. Because electricity is the concurrent subject, so both the central and the state government have the power to make, rules and regulations. And so we have the Electricity Act, which is the, the governing act, the central act. And then the states have their own regulatory commissions and, the nodal agencies, and they come up with their own regulations. So there have been a lot of incentives, both at the center and the state level, which have promoted the growth of the solar industry. Particularly if you see, there are the solar parks, which, there is a focus on solar parks. Land, there are various incentives which are given on the land. For example, many of the states say that you do not have to pay, stamp duty and registration fees. So there are a lot of incentives. Land has become one of the major issues with respect to renewable energy projects. And in fact, many of the state policies provide for deemed conversion because, Land Reforms Act, if there is an agricultural land which is procured for the renewable energy project, it has to first be converted into for non-agricultural purposes before you can, set up the industry. So like that, there are various incentives which the government is giving. For example, even if you look at the viability gap funding, which has been offered, or earlier it used to be the generation-based incentives. Then there are tax holidays which were offered for a period of 10 years, income tax holidays for setting up of solar. All these factors have greatly contributed to the growth and the uptake of solar energy in India. More recently, I think one of the problems which solar industry faces is, the late payment by the DISCOMs, the state DISCOMs. I'm talking about the large-scale projects. There have been a lot of amendments, and there has been a regulation called the late payment surcharge rules, which has come up in 2022, and basis which the state DISCOMs have actually made, the payments which were pending. And so there is, that balance sheet problem is getting resolved. Change in law. Now, for signed PPAs, the PPAs are typically for a 25-year period. And we usually see that, there are issues with respect to, change in the legal scenario, which ultimately lead to an impact on the tariff. So the government has, the Ministry of Power has come up with the change in law rules, which basically say that, the appropriate commission, it verifies and adjusts the tariff on a monthly basis of a particular formula. So we see a lot of development on the legal and regulatory side, which has led to an advancement in the, in the solar energy sector.
Thank you. That was really, really informative, because many of the talks we hear, people, the event managers focus more on or rather only on the technical aspects. So these were very, very interesting insights when you touch the power of the regulatory bodies at the state and the central level. There could be even conflicts. I would assume there could be even conflicts between these two entities' interests. And you also touched a very interesting thing, which is related to the incentives on the land reforms. Very, very interesting. And the viability gap funding is I think it's a topic by itself. Viability gap funding is a topic by itself. And thank you so much. Now, let us go to the second round of the generic questions. So can I start with Dr. Vinod again? We would like to delve into the recent commitment of the G20. Now, in this round, I wanted to connect, or I have tried to connect the discussions, not around, but a bit related to the the commitments and the deliberations happened at the G20, because it's very, very fresh and it's very, very key. So we would like to delve into the recent commitment of the G20 summit to triple the global renewable energy capacity by 2030, tripling. It is heavily ambitious. I think it's beyond the definition of ambitious. We all know that. How do you view this commitment in light of India's renewable energy goals? Let's not think beyond India for this discussion. How do we think about Indian context, particularly in the solar sector?
Okay. So thank you for a nice, again, good question, regarding the G20 and the tripling of our targets and goals. Now, before I move forward, I would like to say that our panelists are very knowledgeable and they're covering a deep aspect of the solar energy. And our moderator is equally knowledgeable and nice moderator. I have never seen such a nice Mr. Madhu. Thank you to you. Okay. So your question, the commitment made at G20 summit. Now, this particular commitment of tripling of the global and renewable energy capacity by 2030 is indeed a very, very ambitious target, because it reflects the collective recognition of the importance of transitioning towards cleaner energy sources to combat the climate change. Okay, in this context, the India's renewable energy goals, particularly in solar, maybe we can talk about the biofuel and wind, but particularly in solar, this commitment aligns well with the country's vision and efforts. I remember that when I met the International Solar Alliance team in Abu Dhabi in UAE, so I could understand that there were plus 90 countries who have signed and ratified the ISA frame agreement. And India is, co-partnering, leading that ISA solar alliances. Now, India has been actively promoting renewable energy with a particular focus on solar power to meet its growing energy demands and reduce the carbon emission. India set a target of 450 gigawatt, as you said correctly, out of which 280 gigawatt is from the solar power annual, which is again really a huge target. This demonstrates that India's commitment for expanding its solar sector and contributing to the global renewable energy goals. Okay. Now, the power of solar, if I talk about in a layman language, if I want to make our participants understand what exactly is the solar power, I usually ask one simple question, and people are astonished to understand that what exactly is how much big is the solar power we are talking about. Now, if I ask my participants or the panelists or everyone that how much do you think that solar power is required to power the complete solar power for 24 years? Okay, this is a simple question, that how much solar power is required to generate the power which is required for another 24 years for the whole entire earth. Not talking about India, not talking about Saudi or everywhere. It's complete earth. And the answer is just amazing. It requires only 24 hours of solar power to generate the power for another 24 years for the complete earth. So that much big power we are talking about. So to achieve this ambitious target, India has implemented various initiatives, as my colleague Megha, she said about it, like policies to promote solar energy infrastructure, which includes financial incentives such as subsidies, tax benefit to encourage the investment in the solar project. Now, government also have launched various programs and schemes across India. Like maybe, the Kusum scheme is there, to be very precise, to support the installation of solar power, especially in rural areas. So further, India has been actively involved in international collaborations and partnerships to accelerate the adoption of solar energy. For instance, as what I said, ISA has been co-founded by India, which aims to promote solar power deployment globally and facilitate knowledge sharing among member countries, which are around 90 plus countries. The commitment made at G20 Summit reinforces India's efforts and provide an international platform to collaborate other nations in achieving global renewable energy targets. Here, I would like to say that we are right now celebrating the Amrit Kal Mahotsav, and what has been said by our beloved Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Bhai Modi, it is one earth, one family, and one future. So with this particular message, the whole world is coming along and joining the mission together with us. While the commitments are ambitious, of course, it also presents an opportunity for innovation and collaboration, and new advancements are required in the solar technology, energy storage, what Dr. Palit has told, which is very much a key point over here. And a grid integration can help overcome challenges and drive the renewable energy transition even faster and faster. Overall, the commitment made at G20 Summit aligns with India's renewable energy goals, particularly in the in the solar sector, and it reinforces India's determination to expand its solar capacity and contribute to the global sustainability efforts. So I'm sure that by working together with other nations, India can strive towards achieving these ambitious targets and accelerate the transition to a cleaner and greener future. And I hope that I'm trying to answer your questions within time. Thank you, Mr. Madhu.
Thank you, Vinod. That was really, really interesting, especially when you touched the ISA. If I understand correctly, India is one of the lead members of International Solar Alliance, obviously for obvious reasons, because we are one of the countries or the leading country which has adopted solar technology and the solar power to the lowest level, I would say, in the country. And
here I would like to add upon that International Solar Alliance is not being led by India, but rather it is co-founded by India, and which is being supported by around 92 or 94 countries as on today. Thank you.
Yeah, right. I didn't use the right word. I used the word lead member of the International Association and Alliance.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, and we co-founded as well. Yes, correct. So that's interesting. And you also touched upon the determination of the country and the government. And I would say I would connect it to the need of the hour as the need of the country's growth as well, because need of the hour towards the GDP growth we are targeting. This is one of the key components towards that, not only for the environmental aspects or the carbon emission control or other thing. It's need of the hour towards the commercial growth and the financial growth of the country as well. Now let me move to Advocate Megha Arora. As we continue discussing the global commitments to renewable energy, including the recent G20 summit, it is very essential to consider how the legal framework and the regulations can support India's transition to renewable energy sources. We are halfway, but we are still moving. As we all know, the financial resources are crucial for the renewable energy project, because these are highly capital intensive projects. So can you shed some light on how the legal frameworks can facilitate mobilization of the necessary financial resources for the renewable energy within the country or from overseas?
Sure. So availability of long-term, low-cost financing is vital for the uptake of solar energy in India. So RBI has recognized renewable energy as one of the priority sector lending. Currently, the Indian solar industry is dominated by bank financing, and that has several problems. Firstly, it is front loading of debt repayment. Usually, the repayment period for the life cycle of the project of 25 years, 20 to 25 years, the repayment period is 8 to 10 years, so which makes it extremely capital intensive. Another issue is, time and cost overruns, because usually these projects, there will be delays with respect to permits and consents, land acquisition, etc. So it leads to time and cost overruns, which ultimately lead to the concept of non-recourse financing is very limited in India. It typically becomes limited recourse financing, or sometimes, they look to the promoters of the project for cost overrun undertakings or pledging, the shares of the equity pledge, etc. So it's not just typically project financing. When you consider it, it is the cash flow of the projects should be enough to, make the repayments. And the payments, the security is the project itself. The entire project is hypothecated to the banks. And that is the whole concept of non-recourse financing. But in India, we find that to be very limited, and it is usually, which leads to cost overruns. That's another issue. So typically, I think now availability of long-term low-cost financing is required. Of late, apart from banks, we are seeing, NBFCs like IRIDA, which are very active, which provide for, soft loans, and they also look at, certain funds which are providing, low-cost interest as low as, 5%. So that is one of the main aims of IRIDA. Apart from that, we see that there are bilateral and multilateral institutions which are extending loans. ECBs play a major role, so therefore a rationalization of our ECB policy has also led to low cost financing, in the sense the interest rates tend to be lower than for ECB financing. So apart from that, I think certain issues which are there with respect to, there is no definition of green financing. I think once we have a definition of green financing, we can segregate it for even in the RBI priority sector lending. It does not really define what green financing is. Once we have that, and once we have certain parameters which are going to figure out, what should the targets be for the companies. In that case, we can prevent greenwashing, and I think the financial institutions will also have much more faith in the lending process.
Thank you for touching some very, very key things. Like I have to agree that the front loading on this project, for that matter, not only the solar project, any project, the front loading is very, very key, and it's a direct influence for the overall cash flow during the entire project life cycle. So that's a very, very important point you brought up. And the most interesting word I liked is the long-term low-cost financing. It's a very, very difficult thing in any developing country. In India is not an exception. So it is really a challenge, and it's going to continue as a challenge for some more time. And the good news is RBI bringing the solar or the renewable energy into the priority sector funding. So that is a very good news, and it's going to encourage the big investors or even the medium-sized investors to get into this field. And we can see it's very, very visible. Thank you so much. Now let us move to Dr. Devajit Palit. Devajit, the G20 again emphasized the need for uninterrupted energy flows and sustainable energy choices. Because it's not just enough building more and more capacity of green energy, but it's also about making it uninterrupted, because it's useful for practical purposes. And how much we can sustain. And my question to you is, how the decentralized electricity solution, because you are an authority in this area, such as renewable energy, mini grids, how these things are playing a visibly major role in achieving these goals? And what policy measures do you see, or do you recommend more to be added to facilitate this growth? Please.
Thank you. So let me answer it in two parts. So India has been a leader in the decentralized electricity solution. So we all India started implementing decentralized solution right from the inception of the Department of Non-Conventional Energy Sources in 1982. This one, and thereafter the first mini grid was implemented in India in around 1992. This one, in one of the village in then MP in Bilaspur district. Now it is in Chhattisgarh. So sometimes I say, this morning I was taking a session in one of the training program, and I was saying that actually Modhera is not India's first solar village. So when newspaper writes that, it is not the full information. Modhera is India's first 24/7 electricity, solar electricity village. So India's first solar village is actually a village in Bilaspur, forgetting the name, but it was called something like Lamhi or something like that, where the first mini grid was implemented way back in 1992. And around the same time in Sundarban, in Kamalpur village, the solar project was implemented. So we have an experience of decentralized solar, including mini grids way back from the 1990s. What many of the other countries and this one have started implementing now. This one. Now, having with that type of background, we are definitely again in a pole position to take advantage of the mini grid technology, but we cannot have the same technology that was implemented, say, 20 years or 30 years back. Now with more digitalization and decentralization and what I call it democratization of the grid with P2P, peer-to-peer energy trading happening with rooftop solar projects. Very recently, UP Regulatory Commission has also come out with their guidelines for P2P trading in energy. I think in India, we will see decentralization taking place in a different way, mainly for reliability. We have the grid covering the entire country. So for reliability, decentralized technology would be used. For grid support, tail end voltage support and other grid support, what we call it ancillary grid, ancillary services. So I think decentralized energy will have a big role in providing ancillary services and some value-added services. And in terms of democratizing the grid with rooftop solar, a lot of people becoming prosumer, and they could trade energy with their neighbors and with the utility. So the utilities role, I think, is going to change. The utilities might start working like the online brokerage platform, where they will facilitate the trading between the different consumer and prosumer, and in the process can earn some commission. So they have to think about new business model. Now that's what in a country like India or in a developed countries, this type of system is taking shape, what we call it energy islands. This one, and some of the private utilities actually already started these models, whether it is Tata Power or CSC or this one or some of the other private distribution companies. Now, if I take the similar model to Africa, the models completely changes. Now, in case of Africa, energy access continues to be a big problem. And some studies say that out of the about 600 million people who don't have access to electricity, with almost 90% of them in Africa, mini grid is going to play a big role in providing them access in a clean way. So solar mini grids is going to play a big role. Many of the might be interesting. A lot of people might find it interesting that many of the Indian companies are now bidding in Africa, taking experience from India in implementing mini grids in Africa, like in Nigeria, Tanzania, Rwanda, and other places. A company has recently just signed an agreement to set up 1,000 mini grids in Africa, and for that they have already raised the finance. So in case of Africa, the mini grids is going to play a big role in providing energy access. While in India, energy access is not a problem now, it used to be 10 years back. So in India, it will be the reliability and value-added services that mini grids is going to, or decentralized solutions is going to provide, whether it is in rural area. We have an experience of implementing this thing in the rural area, but I think going ahead, urban area is also going to see mini grids and decentralized systems being set up purely from reliability and this sort of value-added service point of view. I hope it answers your question.
It does. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. In fact, it is connecting with what I was mentioning during my introductory, remarks, like, less burdening the public grid by the mini grids. And I'm really fascinated with your new terminology, online brokerage. In fact, to be very honest, it's a new terminology for me. Online brokerage for the localized grids or the energy islands. It's a beautiful idea, and I'm new to this. I would explore more. These are the ways the whole system can change. These are revolutionary changes. These are revolutionary changes which are going to change the entire landscape, even beyond the country or beyond the continent. And you really touch how the modern Indian index success is being commercially replicated in other parts, especially in African continent. Thank you so much for connecting those things. Now we will go to the third round of our dialogue, which we call as a special round or a specific round. Here, as I mentioned earlier, we would be touching upon areas, or we will be throwing questions to our panelists, very clearly mappable to their areas of expertise or interest. Now, let me start with Advocate Megha Arora. With your rich legal expertise and track record in facilitating the project development, particularly in the renewable energy sector, we would like to delve into India's transition towards clean energy sources. As the nation strives to expand its solar energy infrastructure significantly, what are the key legal challenges faced by the solar industry? You did touch some of the things, but if you could please elaborate specifically to this. Also, if you can please touch upon what are the legal mechanisms and strategies that can contribute to the success of solar project, and what lessons can be derived from the challenges which the solar industry faces, or even the learnings we had in past. Please.
Thank you so much. So I think I've touched upon some of the issues earlier, and so have the esteemed panelists. But apart from what I've already discussed, solar, I'd like to focus on, one very important aspect. Firstly, the risks and the, what leads to a dispute and speedy dispute resolution. So solar contracts are long-term in nature, and no contract can provide for all situations during its lifetime. Projects face risks not foreseen or addressed in the underlying contractual arrangements, giving rise to the need to renegotiate sometimes or rebalance the contract. Some of the key project developer risks include difficulties in obtaining land, which I had spoken about, in right of way for projects, including conversion for the permitted usage of the land, construction delays and cost overrun, supplier defaults and delays, force majeure events envisaged in the contract, and sometimes there could be events which are not envisaged in the contract, unforeseen events, change in the legal and regulatory landscape, grid outages, payment delays, cash flow issues. All of these issues would inevitably lead to disputes, delays, and inefficiencies in the project delivery. From a legal perspective, resolution of disputes in a timely fashion is the need of the hour. On an average, from the date of filing of the petition before the relevant regulatory commission, which is the first stage of institutional dispute resolution in the Electricity Act, it takes almost 1 to 1.5 years for passing of the order. And an appeal lies to APTEL within a time-bound period of 45 days. But the appeal itself could take another 1 to 2 years. And thereafter, for special questions of law, even the Supreme Court can be approached. And there is a period of 60 days to approach the Supreme Court. If the matter goes to the Supreme Court, it can take approximately about 1 to 2 years. So if you look at the overall trajectory, it could take almost 5 to 6 years under the institutional dispute resolution under the Electricity Act. Now, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has recently, in the year 2019, come up with an order establishing a dispute resolution committee. The dispute resolution committee is actually a 3-member, an administrative body, which does not have any judicial or expert member. And the aim of the dispute resolution committee is to fast track disputes. We have done a deep dive into this, and of course, there was a new order in 2023, I think in the month of June or July, which superseded the earlier orders, and they have consolidated this whole dispute resolution committee process. Having said that, if we look at the SECI contracts, and I'll just explain first what a dispute resolution committee is. It is a 3-member committee. It is only meant to resolve disputes between investor and state. State are the renewable energy implementation agencies, such as SECI, NTPC, NHPC, and any other REIA, which is notified by the MNRE. So if there is a dispute in all these bid out projects by the REIAs, between the REIAs and a project developer, then the project developer can approach the DRC. But first, they have to go back to the REIA, and the REIA has to pass a speaking order, which means that the REIA is sort of being a judge in its own cause. They are supposed to pass an order, which is a speaking order. Having said that, it is very unlikely that the project developer is going to get any relief, if at all, from the REIA itself. After that, there is a time-bound process to approach the DRC. And the DRC is supposed to pass its recommendations to the MNRE. Now, if we see the way the DRC is, is constituted, the DRC reports to the MNRE, but the funding of the DRC, the payment of fees, etc., is to be done by the REIAs. Also, the REIAs are supposed to make arrangements for holding the hearings, and there is no impartial way of conducting the hearings according to the study that we have conducted, because of the fact that there is a lot of interference by SECI NTPC itself in the whole process. So in a sense, there is that the whole element of bias, which the lack of bias. It is questionable, because whether a project proponent will actually get the relief or not, considering that it is not, the DRC is not an independent body completely, it still functions within the overall, aegis of the REIA. In fact, it would have, there is a possibility that if MNRE can take over and set up the office and, even a particular fund through which the fees of the DRC can be paid, in that case, it can be a more independent body. And if this step can be made mandatory, because currently it's optional on the, the project developers to approach the DRC. They can just go by the institutional dispute resolution mechanism, approach the relevant regulatory commission. If it is made mandatory to approach, this is like a sort of a mediation step where you have to first exhaust the DRC and then approach, I think that also would lead to a speedy resolution of disputes. So while there are efforts which are being taken by the government to, promote renewable energy and especially contract sanctity and resolution of disputes, we still see that there is a lot of, there is scope for improvement, and hopefully, but the government has been very open to suggestions. And hopefully, if there could be certain more amendments, it could really be beneficial for the process. Another important aspect which I would like to touch upon is the import duty on solar panels and solar cells. So last year it was imposed about 40% import duty on solar panels and 25% in solar cells. So while, of course, it has led to, a push towards Make in India and the whole PLI scheme, it has led to local manufacturing. But there is a demand-supply gap, which is being faced by the industry. So if there could be some rationalization with respect to taxes and some certainty, I think that would really help the solar industry, to flourish in, and grow further. And one last point I would like to touch upon is this, I think, so you had touched upon this, Dr. Pillai, that there could be a dichotomy between the center and the state. Now, there is a big push towards captive generation and setting up of captive plants. And in fact, the electricity rules have recently been amended to further promote captive generation. But recently, the government of Karnataka, like just an example, has imposed grid support charges. And while, so that makes the whole tariff for CNI customers higher and takes away the savings of setting up of the captive plant. So while on the one hand, there is a push towards captive, there are certain, charges, etc., which are being imposed at the state level, which can make the captive generation cost prohibitive. So these are few aspects which I thought I will touch upon. One is certainty of fast track dispute resolution, certainty of taxes, and certainty of policy between the center and the state, which will really help the solar industry.
Thank you. Very interesting points. The risk appetite, the first point, or one of the first points we touched, is very, very important. The risk appetite of the developer. Obviously, it is dependent on so many factors, directly and indirectly related to the immediate ecosystem and the government themselves. And I also, like the aspect about the fast track dispute resolution, because that is one of the challenges as a country we face always, whether it's the normal legal system or the dispute of centralized or industrialized or I would call it the customized dispute resolution system. All of these things work pretty sluggish. And I also would like to add one more dimension, if you agree. The transaction cost is pretty high in the country. So if there is a cost overrun or a time overrun in the project, it is going to directly reflect to a heavy cost overrun because the transaction cost is phenomenally high. In India, I would say the transaction cost is not less than 25 to 30%. That's a huge number. Thank you so much. And let me move to Dr. Vinod Tiwari now. With your vast and rich experience in the solar and power electronics industry, now we are trying to pick your technical brain. And we want to explore the broader implications for India's solar energy sector. Could you please walk us through the significant solar energy project, one of them or a couple of them quickly, because we don't have so much time, or initiative within India that you find noteworthy in terms of its technological innovation and social impact? Because we I don't know who, but one of the panelists did touch upon the technological advancement, the increase in the efficiencies of the solar panels themselves. So this is something connected to that. You have a great passion for blending the industry knowledge with philanthropic effort. This is another thing we found very, very interesting in your profile. With this background, it would be really valuable if you can please touch upon the other side of it, how some of the initiatives have contributed to advancing the solar technology and the overall societal development of the country. Because this is very directly related and people don't see that. And additionally, I can also see great potential for a very effective intersection of the solar energy and the blockchain technology. And we would like to hear a bit from your side as well on your thought on how the blockchain can enhance the transparency. I don't know if it is already tried or practiced by some of the parties in the country, or it's going to be a near future opportunity. Over to you.
Thank you. So that's a very interesting question you have asked, and thank you for asking such a nice question, which is close to my heart. Now, I'd like to, summarize this in 3 parts. So first of all, a bit of my experience, my previous experience. Then I'll come upon your talk regarding the blockchain and the technology, how it's making a part, and then a little bit of my suggestions to the government of India. Okay, so. Yeah, first thing that, being a passionate engineer and, working with the oil and gas companies for last 1 decade in UAE, I have been fortunate to, promote the solar power in my company because we were a leading company for battery storage devices and we were doing great. And then we were having a UPS systems, but then solar was not a part of the product. So I got a, chance to launch it. And there we were having a huge kind of a competition, from Western to Eastern part of the world. So there we thought to work upon something which is different, which is not easy, where at least we can cut the competition. And that the oil and gas companies, they have the huge specifications and then they don't want to decline or they don't want to divert. So we have to follow and, comply all those things. And with that, we have been able to support and satisfy their needs and requirement in a technology way. So here we have did a great work for the off-grid solar power plants in UAE for ADNOC, wellheads, and there we were being able to do that because of the mix match of the components from across from the different part of the globe. Like from Germany, we procured the battery systems. From Japan, we procured the solar panel, and from UK, we have been able to procure the inverter to match their requirements. So this is something called technology adaptiveness. Now, another part I want to touch upon, which you said about the blockchain technology. I have been associated with Niti Aayog for last 5 years, and there I'm supporting the government of India to, to share my knowledge to those young minds to make them creative or entrepreneurship for this blockchain technology, for the artificial intelligence, for cloud computing. So these things are creating a huge kind of a new impact in everywhere. You name it, and it's already must be there. So this is very interesting. I would like to touch upon that blockchain can enhance the efficiency of the data management within the solar energy sector itself. It can enable the secure and decentralized solar storage of the data related to solar power generation, consumption patterns also, and grid integration. This blockchain. Now, here I would like to touch upon one noteworthy solar energy project, which is in India, which is in Kurnool. It is Kurnool, located in Andhra Pradesh, AP. This project stands out to be a technological innovation and significant societal impact, till today. This Kurnool mega project is one of the largest solar projects in the world, spanning about around 5,000 acres and have a capacity of 1,000 or 1,200 megawatt. I don't remember exactly. But this project is remarkable in its adoption of the advanced technologies and innovative approaches. Now, firstly, the solar park utilizes single axis tracking system, okay, which allows solar panels to follow the path of the sun throughout the whole day. Okay, this technology maximizes the efficiency of the solar power generation and optimizing the exposure to the sunlight all the day. Secondly, this project incorporates a hybrid model combining both solar photovoltaic PV and concentrated solar power, which my friend Dr. Palit was talking about. This technology is CSP technology is using mirror or lenses to concentrate sunlight into a receiver and generating heat that drives a turbine to generate electricity. So you can understand that how this technology is involved here. This integration of this technology enables efficient power generation, even non-daylight hours, non-sun hours. In terms of societal impacts, this Kurnool Park has brought significant positive changes to the local community and the broader Indian society. Okay. And additionally, the solar park has also transformative effect on the solar power and in the power sector, because addressing this energy access challenges and reducing the dependency on the fossil fuels, which is not infinite. Now, let's talk about how blockchain technology can enhance the transparency and efficiency and trust within the Indian solar energy infrastructure. This blockchain can play a crucial role by streamlining and securing various aspects of solar power systems, such as energy transactions. Okay, you can understand that data management, supply chain processes. So these all aspects can be utilized by this blockchain for making it transparent and immutable records of energy transactions. Here, one more thing I would like to add, that this can help in tracking the generation and consumption of solar energy, enabling efficient billing and fostering trust between the energy producers and energy consumers. So this is something which can facilitate the data sharing among the stakeholders, optimizing energy distribution, and supporting the data-driven decision-making processes in terms of the supply chain, blockchain technology, and transparency and traceability. So these are the technology which is really going to support and help in this system. And definitely, what Dr. Palit has come up with something, how we need to have the out of box thinking. Today these things are indulging in our life, in our society. So why not in this technology? The last point I would like to cover, that means this is something from my personal end to the government of India, to come a couple of recommendations or suggestions to make these things very, to promote the renewable power in this coming years in the country. Now here, although things are moving really great, fantastic, but then still, if we get something better to implement the supportive policies, such as like feed-in tariffs, tax incentives, and subsidies to encourage the investment in this particular sector. Secondly, I would like to say that if we have been able to increase the investment in the research and development, which is the very much left about part, R&D, which can drive innovation in the renewable technologies to make them more efficient and cost effective. These two factors can be enhanced by these R&D factors. Now, third and the last, I would like to say that we should encourage the skill development, which is the very key factor. Supporting like training programs and educational initiatives, which can help the skill workforces who will be capable of designing, installation, and maintaining these renewable power solar system. We will have the experts who have been certified, through particular communities or maybe agencies. And conducting public awareness campaign can educate the public about the benefits of the renewable energy and encourage a widespread adoption of this solar power system, which can help us to grow more. So these things I would like to cover. Thank you, Mr. Madhu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know your recommendations to the government of India are pretty interesting, especially the and more encouragement to R&D, which can lead to more and more innovation in the skill development, be it for blue collar or white collar workers or employees. These two are really, really catchy points. Now, let me move to Dr. Pallet. We're running a bit short of time, but we still can go smooth. You have very rich experience in rural electrification and decentralized electricity solution. Now, these two are key drivers to India's energy landscape. As we dive deep into the transformative potential of the solar energy infrastructure in rural and remote areas, I would like to explore the intersection of the solar power and the water energy food nexus. I repeat, the water energy food nexus connected to the solar power.
Excellent.
And that's very critical for India's sustainability goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent question. So I think solar is something which is very much compatible or very much it's a natural link with within the water energy food nexus system. The reason I'm saying is that we have in India either the pumps have been energized in many of the states, or we are still using diesel for drawing water from the underground. Now, in both cases, solar can play a very big role. Wherever the grid has been, wherever the agricultural system is dependent on the grid-based pumps, we can actually solarize the electricity feeder. And solarizing the electricity feeder, like it has been done in case of Maharashtra and few other states by EESL, you can actually provide electricity to the DISCOM at say around 3 rupees 50 paisa, something like that. And whereas in many of the states, the state government is providing free power to the farmers or a very subsidized at a very subsidized price, and the notional cost of delivering that electricity to the farmer is around 6 to 7 or 8 rupees sometimes. So if you can provide it right at the field to the DISCOM at 3 rupees 50 paisa, for every kilowatt hour of electricity, the DISCOM is going to save around 4 to 5 rupees or around 4, right? This one. Now that itself is going to be a driver for the energy transition process, because if the DISCOMs can stop losing money, that adds to their balance sheet, and that will further scale up the process of energy transition, because there will be in a better position or in a more stronger position to support the energy transition process. This is one. So wherever the agriculture, wherever the pumps are connected to a rural agricultural feeder, those feeders should be solarized. And more so because during the solar you can get during the daytime, the farmers also need water for 4 to 5 hours in a day. So it very well matches with the demand of water and the solar radiation timings. It matches with whatever is the requirement for the farmer. So that's a good win-win combination for both. Of course, there are some teething problems. Those problems have to be addressed, but those teething problems are not very big which cannot be addressed. The other part is that wherever the diesel pumps are being used, so the Prime Minister Kusum program is also dealing with that, where diesel pumps can be converted to standalone solar pumps. This one, Chhattisgarh has done wonderfully well in this regard. They have their own scheme. I'm forgetting the name of the scheme. It's something like solar pump program. I think more than 50,000 standalone off-grid pumps have been implemented in this state to convert the diesel pumps into solar pumps. And the good thing is that these pumps are being used by the lowland, the marginal and small and marginal farmers. A pump is sufficient to cover the entire landholding of a farmer in those states. Some of the states like UP, West Odisha, Bihar, and other, where solar pumps could be an extremely feasible option because you can get water at shallow depth. So you don't have to have a high horsepower pump like the way it is being used in Rajasthan. This one. Now the advantage of a solar pump is that you get water throughout the day, right? From say 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the evening. And we design the pumps based on the water discharge capacity, not the horsepower. If your water is in the shallow depth, right? So a 5 HP pump, a diesel pump, can be replaced with a 1 HP solar pump. Because it can provide you the same quantity of water because you are using it for a longer duration time if the water is shallow depth. So states which have a shallow depth water should get themselves converted to solar pumps instead of diesel pumps, and that also helps in achieving your climate change targets. So I think both the solarized agricultural feeder and also the individual solar pumps can be implemented in a big way in the country, depending on where you are implementing. Not everything would be fit or for every location. So it has to be very context specific. In Gujarat, for example, they've implemented the solar pumps in a big way. And that will also, as the Honorable Prime Minister says, could be an additional income for the farmers. This one, if they're selling the electricity to the grid, then that could be an additional income. Now with everywhere the grid has reached, so that could be an additional income for the farmers. Not everywhere you can do it, this one, but wherever possible, electricity can be fed to the grid also during off-peak farming season, and that would bring in additional money for the farmers. So I think whatever water is required for farming, that is especially for cash crop cultivation and other things. I won't suggest that solar should be used for sugarcane cultivation. This one or something like that. That would be too much water, so it might be. So that will increase the price. Technically, it can be done, but that will only increase the price. But I would add a point here that along with solar, we should also go for energy efficient pumping system. Most of the pumps are very old-fashioned, inefficient, so they should also be converted to energy-efficient pumping systems, especially DC pumps, which are more efficient, and two, with better irrigation system like drip irrigation and other systems, which in Gujarat they have done it. So this model can facilitate. You need less water in drip irrigation system, and solar is in a good could be a good technology to support that water system. So in isolation, it may not work well, but in a combination with energy efficient pumps, drip irrigation models, and all these things, solar can be the standalone solar pumps can work in a wonderfully way. Well, in a country like India to support the water energy food nexus, because you need water. Ultimately, you need lots and lots of water for farming to have more production, and for that water you need energy, and that could be supported by solar.
Thank you so much. Now, we are almost at time, but we would still like to take 2 or 3 questions. We got a lot of questions, but our team has shortlisted some of them. I don't think we have time to cover even those ones. Let me start with one question. This is from Sudhir Sampre. With such a big targets of installation of solar panels, why we have not tried to make basic semiconductor cells in India instead of importing them? It's a hot topic at the government level, but who would like to volunteer to try to answering this question? The question is, when are we going to establish these facilities? Is the main question. It's an important point why we are not focusing on the semiconductor industry.
So,
even if you want to.
May I
Please.
Yeah,
please.
thank you. So this is a very valid question. And till now, the solar means the cells are not being made in India from silicon. From silicon wafers, cells are being produced. I don't want to name the country, but in different parts of the world. And we are importing those particular cells, and we are then capsulating those cells and making those panels. And I should say that integrating and making the panels over here in India. Now, there are various reasons why this technology has not been, in this country. First reason that what Megha also, covered about it, that the demand and supply earlier was not matching, and the huge investment was not supported by the government policies. Now, at this stage, for last couple of years, Indian government is working very hard with the PLI schemes, and they want to encourage those big players to make these particular silicon cells itself in India. So the things are going very fast, and soon we will understand that major big players would be manufacturing the solar cells here in India. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let me touch another question. This is from Anu Francis. As explicitly to Amidst, the questioner has asked if Dr. Debajit can answer. Sir, could you please explain a little further on the innovative business models used in decentralizing solar projects? It's a topic by itself, but please, if you can attempt.
Yeah, so very, very quickly, now in Europe and other places, what we are calling them as energy islands. So basically a municipality which is the organization responsible for providing electricity services there. So they are owning these distributed generation projects in a local one. There are also prosumers who have solar rooftops in their house or other technologies. And this type of business model where you are disconnecting or at least partially disconnecting from the utility grid and having your own energy sources being implemented in a big way. What we are also calling nowadays called a virtual power plant, where you aggregate the virtual power plant. Let's assume I stay in Noida. If I become an aggregator and all the roofs wherever solar rooftops has been implemented in Noida, I aggregate all these solar power plant, and then I deal with, say, a company that these are my total capacity and this is the amount of energy that I can provide you every day. So let's make a deal. So instead of that company having contract with all the say thousands of roof owners, the company is only dealing with me, and I enter into an agreement with all those 1,000 roof owners. So in the process, I provide them a larger amount of energy at a cheaper transaction cost. So these are the type of models which are taking shape in different countries, including in some parts of India. And going ahead, these virtual power plants are going to provide a lot of services. Like in a recent study in USA, that to maintain the resource adequacy in US, the virtual power plants can provide the resource adequacy at 40 to 60% cheaper cost than the larger power plants. In India, we have not done such study, but I am sure that in India also it will be much cheaper to provide resource adequacy at using these virtual power plants. So these are some of with advent of technology, digitalization, blockchain, you mentioned about blockchain, these things will become the norm. Now it is an exception, but in going ahead, these things will become a norm. And more use of such type of things is going to take place.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. And in many of the exceptions, not only in this industry, in any industry or any sector, exceptions becoming norm over a period of time. And this particular case is going to be pretty short period. Now, I would quickly touch the last question, though I have another dozens of questions. This is from Mirambika. Hope I pronounce your name correct. The solar batteries use lithium as raw material, which has very high energy intensive extraction process. Similarly, photovoltaic glass uses silica refining. Moreover, a large scale of adoption of solar cells would also increase electronic waste. Now, are we currently considering the indirect negative ecological impacts in our policies? And do we need to? If Advocate Megha can attempt it.
So there are policy measures in place, and the government is thinking about end of life, and safe disposal of solar panels and cells. So there is a lot of traction around that, and we will see regulations in place for it. I think the draft regulations are already there, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there is definitely a consciousness towards sustainability and sustainable disposal of the solar panels and solar cells once it has reached end of life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now we have come to the end of our session. Let me personally thank each and every one of you, the panelists, and all the attendees who spared their time to join our event. Now let me pass it on to Anna, who led our team of researchers and coordinated the whole efforts to make the closing remarks. Anu, over to you.
So it was indeed a delight to listen to such a great panelist moderated by Dr. Madhu Pillai. It was so insightful with respect to how we started it and how we touched upon the policy regulatory aspect of it and an industrial point of view, how it is affecting remote areas, rural areas, urban areas. And there was Dr. Palit, wherein he even went ahead for a few of his recommendations. So it was indeed a great and interesting session, and we had a very enthusiastic audience as well. We still have questions coming in, but due to paucity of time, we are not able to. So I would really like to, first of all, thank our moderator, our chair, Dr. Madhu Pillai, for being constantly with us in the smooth conduct of this webinar, and all the wonderful panelists here for sharing your wonderful insights and enlightening today's discussion, Dr. Vinod Tiwari, Dr. Devjit Palit, and Advocate Meg Arora. I think this was indeed a great value addition to CPPR's India Energy Samvad. And with this, let us close the session. Thank you all. Thank you all the participants for joining in. It was great having you all here. Thank you.